Can you travel to Bosnia and Herzegovina with diabetes? Definitely. Bosnia is full of mountains and unique little destinations and great food and culture. Be smart and be careful, and diabetes won't stop you. Hi, I'm still Jeremy, and this is my blood sugar report from 9 days in Bosnia. Over the 9 days, I checked my blood sugar 45 times. The readings ranged from 38 to 343, and the average was 186. But that average doesn't quite tell the full story, because in Bosnia, what really happened was basically a series of spikes into the high 200s or to the 300s, and then a struggle to get it down, and then dropping too low. And towards the end of the trip, suddenly everything evened out. So the 186 average isn't great already, but it's actually kind of made worse by the volatile nature of the blood sugar checks. The good part was that the last few days were much closer to, dare I say it, perfect. Here are some examples. After crossing the border into Bosnia and Herzegovina from Croatia and ending up in the town of Mostar, my first Bosnian check by the famous bridge at dusk was 152, pretty good start. And in fact, over the next 24 hours or so, all of my readings were under 200. And that's while having pizza and beer, and even feeling a little under the weather. A diabetic triumph for me. Even a new type of breakfast food in our room, stuffed bread called burek, served in Yugoslavian style with yogurt, I was fine. What happened next, though, would turn out to be typical of my time in the country. We walked around Mostar, seeing the bullet holes, the burned out, and the rebuilt buildings following the early 90s war, and I even got a blood sugar check on the same spot that my favorite TV traveler Michael Palin stood on his New Europe series. But then a 79, some baklava and potatoes and a shot led me to 61. After some juice, I was still 69, so I had a Twix. And then some insulin and leftover pizza, and suddenly I was up into the 300s. Those sustained lows all afternoon always mean bad news. And despite a Humalog shot before bed, that night and all the next day it never really came down too much. This was the unfortunate blueprint of most of my time in Bosnia and Herzegovina. But then there was some exercise mixed in with all this. Specifically, Bosnia is a very hilly country. Most walks, whether peeking in on a rural mosque with the owners of our guest house, or walking along a river to its source, or even just a trip to the store for snacks, involve stairs and inclines and scenic, meandering paths. It could be that these daily excursions made my average better than it would have been without them. But then again, when life involves traditional coffee in a small meeting room in a mosque, with coffee poured over a spoonful of sugar into lovely copper cups, the diabetic challenge takes a backseat to the cultural connections you're making. And of course, sometimes you need a day off, just hanging around your room, where there's plenty to do. Good evening. There's lots of places to hang out in this apartment. There's the hallway, the bedroom, the bathroom, next to the Oma.
Hello.
Outside on the porch, the living room couch, by the front door. Maybe that's about it. Oh, there's the shower stall. And that's about it. Good evening. But you have to watch that carefully too. Things were especially bad, blood sugar-wise, in the capital city of Sarajevo. Then again, people have had worse days there. This museum display shows Franz Ferdinand and his wife moments before they were shot, right on this street corner, which started World War I. So let's keep diabetes in perspective, huh? In my several days wandering around Sarajevo, including back and forth to our room, which was at the top of a very big, steep, and icy hill, my blood sugar was below 100 only twice. Usually it was in the 200s or higher. Then again, one day I dropped to 38, which would turn out to be the lowest single reading of the entire 4-month trip. And I thought the eternal flame would make my blood sugar exactly this for the rest of eternity. None of this was Sarajevo's fault, of course. It was just that I was out of the zone medically. And with all the excitement and coldness and new food and volatile schedules, it was hard to get a toehold and get back to normal. Sleep was tough in the cold weather. This was January, and our room was sort of warm, I guess, as were our neighbors. But then the museum about the 1990s war wasn't heated. The displays were fascinating, but there was ice on the floors. In bad diabetic times, this sort of stuff, coupled with worrying about blood sugars, can often make them worse if you overthink it. My annoyance at high readings was only making them higher, despite my best attempts at calculating good doses and enjoying the local culture. And I do want to take a second to mention that Sarajevo was awesome otherwise. Chilly but friendly, it had the air of a scarred city being rebuilt. There are good restaurants, some with spontaneous live entertainment, and my diabetic stress was greatly alleviated by the dishes of meat with flat bread and the Sarajevsko beer. Shut up, diabetes, I'm having a good time. Stress was certainly a diabetic factor as we moved from Sarajevo to the town of Visegrad in the Srpska Republic, which is a de facto independent part of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The bus we took went through beautiful farmlands after a recent snow. I was enthralled by the sun slanting over the white fields and the mist hanging above the ground as it got darker, but I was also quite nervous about the road conditions. The roads hadn't been plowed, and while the driver was being careful, we were still on small mountain paths in the snow. When we arrived and the guest house owner picked us up and drove us to our room, I wasn't quite in the mood for the free beer and snacks they laid out. I was 310. And later I found out that the night before there had been a bus crash on a snowy mountain road just a few miles from our route that killed 3 people. High blood sugar for a justified worry? I'll call it a draw. And anyway, Visegrad turned out to be a cure of sorts. I had no more readings in the 300s the rest of my time in Bosnia and Herzegovina. In fact, the highest was barely over 200 for the next few days. Maybe it was the closed World Heritage Bridge over the Drina River that we had to sneak in to see. Don't tell anybody. Or the newly built but still deserted tourist town where 2 rivers meet. Or the hilltop hike to an attractive church in its, well, stylish graveyard, from which you could admire the works of Srpskan rock and roll fans. Or maybe it was even the exoticness of the Cyrillic alphabet on the signs. Whatever it was, blood sugars in Visegrad, after that initial high when we arrived, averaged 135. I'll take that anytime, anywhere. And probably a large part of my good fortune was the hospitality of our guest house owners. We just happened to be in town on New Year's Day for the Orthodox Church, or something like that, and the owners invited us upstairs for a big afternoon meal. It was amazing. Plum brandy and homemade Macedonian wine from the husband's homeland, with organic broccoli and potato soup, local mountain lamb, bread, Russian egg salad, potatoes, vegetables, cheese, all amazing. I took 7 units of Humalog in the bathroom, and we spent the afternoon eating and chatting about the town of Visegrad and about Bosnia, including the recent war. Afterwards, I took 4 more units because of the cake they served afterwards, and later that night I was 215. It would be the highest reading after settling into Visegrad, and really an excellent number for such a big and unknown meal. Let's call it, well, perfect. It was still acceptable the next morning at 1:77 as we packed up and waited beside a Yugo, remember those, for the bus into the next country, Serbia. So that's the story of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Some volatility in the blood sugars with, finally, a most welcome ending and probably the best meal of the entire European trip. The people we met and saw in Bosnia, not to mention the sights and the gorgeous mountain scenery everywhere, and the strong spirit of renewal and rebirth of a great society, were all very welcome surprises. Diabetes problems were a sideshow to all this. I focused on them when appropriate and focused on Bosnia the rest of the time. The next country is Serbia, which, I'm sorry to say, was the worst country, as far as blood sugar readings, of the entire trip. But again, the sights were stunning and quite different than Bosnia and Herzegovina. And again, diabetes or not, it was worth it. Thanks for watching. Check out my other videos for travel tips, stories from my own travels, and my experiences as a type 1 diabetic. See you on the road.